Dear respected Thai, dear noble community, dear brothers, dear sisters, dear friends, today is May the 5th in the year 2019. We are in our spring retreat. Today we have a day of mindfulness in the Upper Hamlet Dharma Cloud Temple. Sitting in this hall, seeing my community, the monks, the nuns, laymen, laywomen, come together to practice the art of mindfulness is already a nourishment and a happiness that I allow to be born inside my heart. Because when I recognize that I am not practicing alone, and I know that I have support of my friends, and have support of the ones that also aspire to cultivate peace, cultivate joy in their life, gives me inspiration. It's much more challenging when we find ourselves feeling like we are the only one that is working towards peace, working towards healing inside of us. But when we recognize that we are not alone, we can tap into that source of energy. We call it collectiveness. The collective energy of mindfulness. When we can tap into the collective energy of mindfulness, we can feel a connection. Because inside each and every one of us, there is a seed of mindfulness, or the energy of mindfulness, that we learn to generate when we are in a practice center. And to generate, we have to allow ourselves this opportunity. We have to give ourselves the chance to come back to ourselves and to be aware of the simple practices that we can apply in this moment. It's not just for the monks and the nuns, but as a lay practitioner, you also have this chance to bring the practice into your daily life. Each of us, we walk, each of us, we breathe, each of us, we eat, we listen, we communicate. And when we have mindfulness, then we do it in a way that brings and generates understanding and compassion. Understanding, first of all, we learn to understand ourselves. Understanding the habits that we have. Understanding the tendency that pushes us, makes us do things that we regret later on, or brings out the emotions and the feelings of anger, fear, jealousy. And having time to recognize what is happening inside of us, that is the practice. When I invite you to come back to your in-breath and your out-breath, I'm inviting you to come back to the energy of mindfulness that lies deep inside of us. And we have to give it a chance to water the energy of mindfulness. Mindfulness is awareness. Awareness of what is happening in the here and the now. What is happening in our body. What is happening in our feelings. Is there pain? Is there tension? Is there stress? And if we don't have the time to look and the time to reflect, then we won't have a chance to know who we are. Each and every one of us, there is a seed of mindfulness that we can touch on a daily basis. It's not only when we are in this meditation hall that we can invite the energy of mindfulness, but it is much easier. And the more that we cultivate the seed of mindfulness, the more it becomes a natural habit that we have. At the beginning, we may have to always remind ourselves and say in our mind, breathing in, I know this is an in-breath. Breathing out, I know this is an out-breath. And we have to constantly remind ourselves, because we don't have yet the capacity to just cut off our thinking and just to dwell in the in-breath and the out-breath. And when we learn to dwell with the in-breath and the out-breath, and we take refuge in the in-breath and the out-breath, another energy is born, and that is concentration. And we have to develop concentration for the energy of mindfulness to be maintained. If we don't practice concentration, then our mind, with its natural habit, will once again follow its tendency to think, to worry, and then we lose our mindfulness. So the practice of mindfulness, when developed, will carry the energy of concentration. And in concentration, we also allow another energy to manifest inside of us. And that is stillness, silent. Stillness is an important fruit of meditation. If we can come back to our mind and our body and allow it to take refuge in the in-breath and the out-breath, then stillness manifests. We see ourselves not being pulled away by our anxiety, our thinking. And we recognize that I have the capacity to just be. And as a monk and a nun, if you have not yet tasted stillness, we have a lot of work to do. Because stillness is a fruit of meditation. We have to be able to touch stillness in our daily life. Our mind is like a lake. And when there's a lot of storms, a lot of motions, the lake is never still. But when we can sit and we allow ourselves to concentrate and just to be, our mind becomes like a still lake. And when the lake is still, it can reflect what is happening. And when the lake is still, it becomes like a clear mirror. And when there's a clear mirror, we can see and we can recognize with clarity. That is also a fruit of meditation. To be able to look deeply, to be able to recognize. And when we recognize suffering inside of us, suffering is the first noble truth in Buddhism? What is so noble about suffering? Suffering only brings pain. What is so noble? As a practitioner, when we learn to look at suffering, then we can start to understand our suffering. And once we understand our suffering, we can see the roots, the causes of our suffering. Sometimes we suffer and we don't know why we are suffering. Sometimes there's a emotion of emptiness that arises inside of me. And I don't know why I feel so empty. And if I don't have the chance to recognize and to look and to be with this emptiness, my natural tendency is try to cover it up. Because emptiness can be very scary. I don't know what I am doing. What is my purpose? Where is my aspiration? Where is my determination? And if I let emptiness overwhelm myself, I will allow my habit of covering it up. I look for something to do. I look for something to eat. I look for something to consume in order not to feel empty anymore. But maybe this emptiness is something that has been transmitted to us by our parents, by our society, by our upbringing. This emptiness has been planted, the seed inside. And when it comes up, instead of recognizing and saying, "Hello, my emptiness, I know you are there. I will be with you and take care of you." Instead of that, we say, "Oh, emptiness is here. I need to cover it up. I need to do something right away." And therefore, we don't take care of emptiness, but we are just putting it aside. And that emptiness is still there, and it will continue to grow. And whenever we are low in energy, or something happens that makes us feel unhappy, then emptiness creeps in. And emptiness saying, "You are sad, I will be here." But instead of recognizing it, once again, the habit to try to do something to change it, instead of to transform it. So as a practitioner in meditation, we have to be able and giving ourselves the space and the time to recognize and to be. When you sit on a cushion, you may think that sitting here for 20 years I will be enlightened. Or we're striving, we're running towards enlightenment, awakening. But if we cannot recognize what is happening here and now, don't even think about enlightenment. If you cannot recognize what is happening inside of you right here, right now. Because enlightenment is enlightenment of something. Awakening is awakening of something. Most recently, I've been in a lot of pain That's why I'm sitting on a chair today. And all of a sudden, I started to have sciatic pain. Sciatic is very intense. And there's this pain that comes from the bottom down to the leg. And my young self says, Phaphu, you are too young. What is going on? And I try to push myself. I try to stretch. And the more I stretched, the more it became worse. And my eagerness was to get better. I didn't allow myself to be in pain. And because I didn't allow myself to be in pain, then I didn't allow myself to rest. Stopping. My mind right away was get better. You gotta serve the community. You gotta show up, be there. And I went to one sitting meditation and I was forcing myself. And as I was sitting, instead of sitting on a lotus flower, peaceful and calm, I felt like I was sitting on fire. There was so much pain, and I was in agony. And I started to fidget and move. And my poor two brothers beside me probably felt my anxiety and my despair at that time. And at that moment, I recognized, why am I forcing myself? Even the notion of sitting meditation is good for you. At that time, it wasn't good for me. And I let go of the thought that sitting is good, but I allow the idea that taking care of myself is also good. Because when I know how to care for myself, I'm also know how to care for the ones around me. And unfortunately, yesterday, as things were getting better, I was walking on our field and the beautiful lawn that the brothers just cut. And suddenly, there was a hole. And I twisted my ankle. And I rolled. And I was holding my alms bow. Alms bow is a monk's bow. And the alms bow is like a transmission from the Buddha's time into our generation of monks and nuns. It represents our humility. When we serve our food, we know that what is given to us is an offering, and we should eat with mindfulness. And even when I rolled, because I always nourished the idea that the monk's bow is very sacred. Somehow I saved the bow, and I didn't allow it to crash. And I had this moment of reflexes and of recognizing that, oh, I really value this alms bow that I have that represents humility. And at that moment, I sat down and my ankle was throbbing in pain. I wanted to cry because I said, what is wrong? I really wanted to cry, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why is my body in so much pain? But then, as I was holding the alms bow, I remember the practice of humility, of allowing ourselves to suffer, allowing and accepting. And as I accepted the pain that was happening, I started to come back to my body and recognize that I haven't I haven't been paying enough attention to my body. I've been forcing my body a lot. And even in the practice, I started to be very, very tense, very rigid. And I needed to allow flexibility to manifest again. And as I was sitting there, I had this moment of me and the pain. And instead of pushing the pain away and trying to heal it right away, I just allow the pain to manifest. And as the pain was very present, I started to bring mindfulness of care and love to my ankle. And I just hold it tenderly without massaging or pushing it to make it feel better. And just that tenderness, I was also taking care of my mental formations that comes along with the pain. Normally, when we have a pain that manifests, we may add more pain to it by our own judgment, our own criticism of oneself. The Buddha teaches us that there's the practice of recognizing the second arrow. The Buddha, in one of his Dharma Talk, he shared that when you are struck by one arrow, it is already painful. But if you struck another arrow at the exact same spot, the pain increases 10 times. And so in our daily life, it is the same. We may have pain and we may have suffering that manifests. And we allow our worries, we allow our stress, we overthink, and that suffering increases 2 times, 3 times, even 10 times. So our practice is to recognize, what is my second arrow? Am I allowing more arrows to come and to enhance the pain? Or do I just recognize, this is the pain, this is the suffering, and you call it by its true name? And you embrace it. You learn to embrace the pain. You learn to embrace the suffering. And once you are with the suffering, with the pain, ease start to come. First, ease in the mind. When I finally said, it's just a twisted ankle, I'll be okay in a week or so. And then right away, that fear dissipates. That anxiety lessens. And your suffering becomes also much less. And this needs awareness. And this needs the energy of mindfulness. As I'm mindful, I know I should not walk too much. So let us listen to one sound of the bell, just to come back to our in-breath and our out-breath as we continue. There is a story in the Zen circle of a man riding a horse. And as the horse is galloping down the village, one of his friends asks him, "Hey, where are you going?" And the man's like, "I don't know, ask the horse." And this story tells the story of our daily life. Sometimes we have habits that just happens and we don't know what we are doing. We don't know why we are doing it. And the more we are in forgetfulness, which is the opposite of mindfulness, then the more we allow destruction and pain and sorrow to continue to be. The first is to be aware of the suffering, but the opposite of suffering is happiness, is well-being. In our daily life, we also have to be able to touch well-being. We have to be able to generate joy and peace and happiness. When we are here in Plum Village and we are able to practice walking meditation, we should be able to touch joy with each step that we take, with each step that we make. Just knowing how beautiful our planet Earth is. And if we can be with our steps, then we can be with Mother Earth. We can really be in the embrace of Mother Nature. And when we are in the here and the now with the practice of mindfulness, we allow the peace and the freshness around to nourish our spiritual body and also our physical body. Our tendency and our habit can be very strong, very powerful. And one of the wings of meditation is learning to stop. Stop here is not just physical, but stop here is learning to stop the endless radio station inside here. Thinking can be very productive, but thinking can also be not productive at all. And in the practice of Plum Village, we always are invited to learn to stop. Whenever we listen to the sound of the bell, it is encouraging us to come back to our in-breath and our out-breath. We learn to stop not just our motion in our physical body, but we learn to just also guide the thinking, guide the mind simply to the in-breath and the out-breath. And we have to continuously do this day in and day out to allow ourselves this new habit, this new training to manifest. And the more we are able to stop, the more we will learn to be present. And being present is a big offering and a big gift we can offer to someone that we love. Being present needs a practice. To sit still, you have to know how to sit still. To be present is not as easy as it sounds. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you know that they are definitely not there? They're somewhere else, and you feel it. But do we ask ourselves, are we really listening to someone? Or are we listening to our own stories? Or are we listening to our own perceptions of what we are hearing? So presence is also another fruit of meditation. To offer presence, we have to have presence. And coming home, coming back to ourselves, is allowing the collective energy of presence inside of us be more alive. When someone who is very present, you sit around them, you are around them, you feel their stability, you feel that they are here for you. And this is something that each of us can offer and each of us can generate. Presence. But we have to learn to stop. We have to have the capacity to recognize. Like when we are doing sitting meditation, we have a chance to sit still for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. That sitting meditation, first of all, is to allow you to do nothing. It's a gift for you to know that nobody's going to bother you in this 30 or 45 minutes. And sometimes not doing anything can actually be very challenging, can be quite scary. But if now we know that sitting meditation allows us to generate stillness and generate peace inside, then the sitting meditation can be much more delicious. To be still can be much more nourishing. And when the mind is carried away in our sitting, as a gatekeeper, we are the gatekeeper of our mind. We recognize, this is the thought. This is a thinking of what am I going to do next? And you have to recognize it. And this is mindfulness. Mindfulness of recognizing our thinking. And once we are aware that we are overthinking, and we just come back, we bring our concentration back into the body, into the in-breath and the out-breath. And you guide the mind into mindfulness. And then you allow yourself not to be carried away anymore. And you allow yourself to cultivate presence. And the more we practice, the more our stability in presence can grow. I believe that after 1 week in Plum Village, if you truly put our energy and our time and allow ourselves to generate this practice, when you go back home or you go back to your city and your friends or your family or your partner sees you, they will see and they will recognize the energy of presence inside of you. It's very, very simple, very subtle, but it is very alive when we cultivate it, when we cultivate stability. When we recognize that that this tendency of running is always there, and we learn to ease the horse, we learn to take control of the horse. We learn to take control of our habits. We recognize it. And once we recognize it, already that energy of habit is much less. Because we start to give it our attention and we direct our energy. We direct our habits, our action into something that is more nourishing and more wholesome. We are like a gardener, and we have a field. We have a garden inside of us. And if we see that there is weed, we learn to pluck the weed so that the flowers has a chance to bloom. The flower here represents our capacity of understanding, of compassion. And when compassion blooms in our heart, everything around us becomes more beautiful. When we start to have understanding of ourselves, and we don't allow the second arrow, the third arrow to continue to strike us, then compassion becomes more alive. Compassion here first is compassion for oneself. And when we have compassion for oneself, then we can learn to offer our compassion to someone else. Understanding is another fruit of our practice of meditation. And to understand, we also have to have the second wing of meditation. That is to look deeply. And to look deeply, first is we have to be able to be still. And to look deeply, we also have to allow ourselves to have time. And in looking deeply, we also have to know our capacity and our limits. Sometimes we look deeply at a suffering, but that suffering can be very overwhelming. And we have to learn at that moment to apply the first practice is to stop. Okay, this is enough. Because the suffering will not go anywhere. It is a part of us. And when we have more strength and more peace, we come back to it. And looking deeply is also to look deeply at what brings us joy, what brings us happiness, what brings us healing. And when we can identify what brings us joy and what brings us healing and nourishment, our choices in our actions become very different. Our choices in what we listen, in what we eat, in what we say becomes very different. Because we see that the suffering has its roots, and happiness also has its root. And everything needs food to stay alive. The Buddha said nothing can survive without food. So the second noble truth is to recognize the root of our suffering. And once we see the root of our suffering, then we know what is feeding our suffering. And once we know what is feeding it, we have to learn to stop. Learn to stop feeding. And on the other hand, when we look at our nourishment, our well-being, we have to see what generates our well-being in our daily life. And we learn to commit to offer ourselves the food to nourish our well-being. When we give ourselves the practice and give ourselves the time and space to nourish mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful listening, or deep relaxation, we are feeding, we are allowing ourselves to nourish our well-being that is inside of us. And if we don't nourish our well-being, then the opposite energy will have a chance to manifest much more. And as a practitioner, we learn to recognize and we learn to start again. We have a practice of beginning anew in our community. Sometimes we have to begin anew in our practice. Even if you've been practicing for 10, 20 years, there may come a time we feel we're in front of a wall. And we have to learn to begin anew. We have to come back to the nourishment that allows our well-being to continue to bloom in our daily life. Coming back to the basic is a high level of practice. Because when we recognize our shortcoming and we're able to embrace our difficulties and our failures, that is strength in itself. That is bravery in itself. We learn to stand up again. And we learn to allow ourselves to come back into the simple practice of mindful breathing, mindful walking. And once we establish that again, we can recognize what to do and what not to do. In my life as a monk, I've had a chance to be my teacher's attendant, to be Thai's attendant for a very long time. And when we had the chance to be our teacher's attendant, we don't only learn from his speaking, we don't only learn from his Dharma Talk, but we get to recognize and we get to see how he lives. We get to see how he practices, and we learn from the living Dharma. And as a young attendant, we were instructed we have to be able to do things for Thai. Thai means teacher. We have to be able to do things for our teacher. The simple thing like prepare tea, prepare his meal, make sure he has his notebooks, his equipments he needs for the Dharma Talk, know his schedule, etc. So as I started, I was very eager to be the best attendant he's ever gonna have. That was my mental, my volition, and I was very eager to do everything. And one day, there was a sister that just came from another monastery in Deer Park, California. And Thai told me that he's going to invite her in for tea. And I knew right away I had to prepare tea. And as Thai came and the sister come, and right away I started to prepare tea. And Thai said, no, let Thai do it. And the first arrow I gave myself, oh man, I'm not even good enough to make tea for Thai. I'm already failing. And as he was making tea, Thai he's a very sweet teacher. He always makes sure his students also get what he gets. So as he made tea for himself, he also made tea for myself and the sister that was there. And as he handed me a cup of tea, and then he was handing the cup of tea to the sister, he accidentally tipped it over. And right away, the best attendant, right? So I run straight to the kitchen to get a towel and to make sure to clean it up. And as I would start to clean, I said, no, let Thai do it. In my mind, I was like, okay, this is the last day. This is my last day that I'm going to be attending Thai. And Thai took the towel, and Thai started to clean the floor. And there was a smile on his face. And And as he was cleaning the puddle of tea, he started to share, he started to say, you know, he calls us gong. Gong means, gong in Vietnamese can mean son or daughter or student. And I said, dear gongs, with an S, because there's two of us. Dear gongs, in our life, whenever we do something and the action doesn't bring the best out of it, and there's a mistake that happens, we don't wait for somebody to come and clean it up for us. We learn to do it ourselves. And at that moment, I understood that Thai was using this to teach the sister who was going through a rough time in the practice, and for her to overcome a mistake that has been done. And Thai said, our action bears our signature. So to begin anew, we don't wait for someone to do it for us. We do it ourselves. Because our action will give rise to new contribution and new impact into our own life and the life of the community and of the world. And I was very young at that time. And I was so happy afterwards. I said, I just got to witness a Zen moment. Because everything was planned out, from making the cup of tea to spilling it and to cleaning it up by Thai. And I carried that with me in my daily life. No matter where we are, no matter how old we become in life and in the Dharma, our practice and our action still bears our signature. And we allow shortcomings to manifest. We allow suffering to manifest. But we also allow ourselves the space and the time to recognize, to take care of, and to begin anew. And when we allow ourselves to begin anew, we continue to be refreshed. We have to allow ourselves to be refreshed daily, at least once a year, if not daily. We have to allow ourselves to have the time to see what can we do better, where can we grow from our difficult experiences, where can we grow from the mud in order for the lotus to bloom. And this is all meditation. When we sit and we have stillness, happiness and suffering becomes more clear in our awareness. And we learn to recognize, and we learn to identify, and we learn to also cultivate the goodness inside of us. There's a lot of goodness inside of us. Goodness that has been transmitted to us. And some of it, didn't have a chance to manifest in our parents' life. And we are their continuation. We bring them into the future. And we allow this goodness to manifest in our daily life, allowing our ancestors, our parents, to also manifest in the present moment. Let us take a moment and breathe with our lungs, but we also breathe with the lungs of our parents, our ancestors, giving them a chance to also taste mindful breathing. As we learn to look at our mind and body, we start to see the link between the mind and the body. If we learn to calm the mind, it will have its effect on the body. And if we learn to be with the body and to calm the body, we are also taking care of our mind. So learning to stop, learning to calm, and also we have to learn to rest. Resting is as important, an important ingredient in healing. Tomorrow we have a very special day, a very holy day in the community. It's called Lazy Day. Very holy. And it's a real practice. And Lazy Day, we give our chance to rest. We may used to have the tendency, say, oh, I have free time, I need to do something productive. And we may create our schedule, what to do each hour, who I want to talk to, who I want to have tea with, etc. And we plan. And as we make our day, our lazy day, become more busy than a normal day. And we have to recognize this tendency, recognize this eagerness. And we learn to just rest. We learn to do nothing. Because here in the practice, when we truly practice laziness, doing nothing is something. Because how active we are already in our daily life. How busy we are in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment. So allowing ourselves to rest is also allowing ourselves to heal. Healing is more effective when we know how to rest. We learn, if you watch the Nature Discovery channel, when the animals become injured, they learn to not do anything. They know to just rest. And they don't worry. They don't look for more food, or they don't look for another mate. But they learn to be still. And we, as human, we also had that insight. But we have lost, and we have allowed another occupation of busyness to overwhelm us. So we have to give ourselves this chance to learn to do nothing and be still. It doesn't mean, you sleep for 24 hours tomorrow. If you need to sleep more, you can offer yourself that chance. But we allow ourselves to just relax. Relax in our walking. Relax. When you have a cup of tea tomorrow, just have a cup of tea. Recognize what tendency come up with you in this cup of tea. Tea meditation is an art. When you drink your tea mindfully, you know that this tea doesn't come from nowhere. It's from all the conditions, from the herbs, the earth that nourish the herbs, from the cloud that help rain, manifest rain for water, for tea to be. And when we drink the tea, we don't only drink the tea. You're drinking the cloud. You're drinking the cosmos. And that cup of tea becomes very real. Most of the time, in the cup of tea, we're also drinking our thinking, drinking our thoughts, our anxiety, our fear, or even our thinking of joy. But at that time, we try tomorrow, we just, you and a cup of tea in your two hands. Mindfulness held perfectly. I dwell in the here and the now. And you establish yourself in the here and the now, and then you drink this cup of tea. And this cup of tea doesn't only become nourishment for the body, but it becomes nourishment for our spiritual body. So spirituality is not just nourished in meditation. When we drink a cup of tea this way, we also are nourishing spirituality in our daily life. To be present with the cup of tea is easier than to be present with someone else. But if we can be present with the cup of tea, and we can meditate on the cup of tea, it becomes an exercise for us, and we can apply it when we are also with someone. We are truly there, mindfulness in the here and now, and we listen with open heart. And we may hear what is not being said. Just by being present, we can hear what is not being said. And even though we don't have the answer to all the difficulties and all the suffering, but being present in that way is a support. And being supported can be a gift that we can offer and a gift that we receive. And tomorrow, when we have a chance to walk, we learn to just enjoy the walk. Walk just to walk. Don't worry about the destination. And we rest with each step. And we sit, is also resting. Not only lying is a rest. So lazy day tomorrow is very, very holy, very sacred. That's the one thing in my 19 years here I have never seen change. It's lazy day. It's on a weekly basis. I remember one time in our community, every time we changed the schedule in the sangha, all the bhikshu and bhikshunis are the nuns and bhikshu are the monks. We sit together and we do a collective brainstorming. to see what has worked last year, what needs to be changed. And sometimes we want to do so much, but there's not enough time, and there's not enough space. So during that one Bhikshu meeting, there was a topic that we wanted to implement into our schedule, and we couldn't find the slot for it. And we had a guest monk who come to be with us and to practice with us, and he joined his palm, and he said, "Oh, dear brothers, I see lazy day. There's nothing. Why don't you put it there?" And all of the bhikshus said, "No, that is the most holiest day. Nobody's allowed to touch that." And that is the practice of stopping. That is the practice of recognizing our eagerness and knowing at the same time also our limits. Sometimes the more we want, the more we become less present. The more we want, the more we become less still. So mindfulness allows us to see and to balance. We learn to recognize and to balance the nourishment, what we strive for, the amount of suffering we can embrace, and at the same time know what is nourishing, what is healing, and what is important. Mindfulness, concentration, and the third fruit of it is insight. Insight is also understanding. We see on the logo over there, it says Smrti, Samadhi, and Prajna. That is the three training in every school of Buddhism. Smrti means mindfulness. Samadhi, concentration. When there's concentration, we learn to enjoy mindfulness much more. It's kind of like if we all go and we look at the sunrise or the sunset. And at first we all see, it's so beautiful. That is mindfulness, that it is beautiful. But if we don't maintain the concentration, then we get out of touch with the sunrise or the sunset. And then we come back into our thinking, our habits, and then we lose the sunset. And the sunset is not there for us. So as we develop and nourish our concentration, then our mindfulness will learn to be more present in our daily life. And when we practice and we learn to generate these energies, the insight will come naturally. Insight we don't force to come. It is born through the practice. There are insights that are offered to us. For example, breathe and know that you are alive. That is an insight. But some of us don't nourish that insight until maybe many years later we then have an awakening. It's like, oh, it is wonderful to be alive. But that insight has been planted, has been watered, seed has been sown in the form of a seed. And insight comes in many forms. Happiness is insight. Learning to recognize the simple joy and the simple nourishment in our daily life is insight. Don't think of it something too far away. Insight is not something after 10 years of practice. But insight can come on a daily basis. When we look at a child, last week we had a young boy in our community, and I saw every monk, every nun, every layman, every laywoman being nourished by the freshness in that child. And when I looked at the child, it reminded me of the beauty of life. It reminded me of the simplicity of joy and of happiness. And seeing him just be in an environment where he feels safe gives me insight, gives me the courage to continue to cultivate my practice so that it can nourish his goodness inside his heart. That boy may leave Plum Village not knowing and not being able to share what is mindfulness. But he left with the feeling of happiness and the feeling of peace is possible, and that there is actually happy people in this world. I came here, my first time to Plum Village was in '96. I was only 9 years old. And I also didn't leave Plum Village with the Dharma, but I left Plum Village with the feeling that, wow, that's a pretty happy place. And there is a chance to have peace and to have joy in our daily life. Because that's what I was able to touch. That's what I was able to feel from the people that I was around. And if that is not insight, what is insight? Because insight should give nourishment. Insight should give more clarity. Yeah. Let us listen to a sound of the bell. So today I would like to encourage us in our practice to learn the art of stopping. Learn to recognize and to calm and to be with the feelings and emotions and our body. Even when suffering manifests, learn to recognize it. And once we recognize it, we shine the light of mindfulness on it. And when we shine the light of mindfulness on it, we are already allowing it a chance for transformation. And we also learn to rest, knowing that rest is as important as doing. And in rest, we allow healing to manifest. It can be very subtle, the healing, but it comes. Because we allow ourselves to be still. This is for our monastic brothers and sisters in our community. After 5 years as a bhikshu, automatically we learn to become Dharma teacher aspirants. And since our last transmission of the lamp, we haven't had the chance to announce the Dharma teacher to be in our community. So today I would like to officially announce the Dharma teacher to be in the Plum Village Sangha. So for the Upper Hamlet and Shanghai brothers, dear brother Pháp Trực, brother Pháp Hiệp, brother Bảo Tích, brother Do Lượng, you are all now Dharma teachers to be. And the sisters of New Hamlet, Sister Thương Nghiêm, Sister Chứng Nghiêm, Sister Tài Nghiêm, Sister Trai Nghiêm, Sister Tảo Nghiêm, Sister Tuyết Hoa, Sister An Vui, Sister Huyền Thoại, Sister Mai Thôn, and Sister Tung Hạc. And for the New Hamlet, for the Lower Hamlet sisters, Sister Trưởng Nghiêm, Sister Tuyển Nghiêm, Sister Năng Nghiêm, Sister Đầu Non, Sister Mộ Phương, Sister Lộc Uyển, Sister Nhất Nghiêm, Sister Trăng Rằm, and Sister Trăng 16. You are all now Dharma teachers to be. So dear brothers and sisters, let's give them some flowers, encouragement. Let me explain a little bit what it means to be a Dharma teacher in our community. When you become a monk or a nun in our Sangha, we don't ask for your diploma, we don't ask for a resume of what you can and cannot do. But we recognize your capacity of learning, of openness. You have to have the beginner's mind of wanting to learn to let go of habits and learn to apply the practice in order to be more solid and stable in our practice. The second is harmony. We learn to practice harmony. Harmony with ourselves, harmony with the brothers and sisters we live together with. We learn to be friends of the Dharma. And the third, we learn to serve. We learn to serve that brings nourishment in our daily life as well as to society. So Dharma work is very simple. Mindful breathing, if you are a happy monk or a happy nun or a happy practitioner, you are doing Dharma work. So dear Dharma teachers to be, do not be afraid of the title or of the responsibility. We don't expect you to be perfect. And learning to be a Dharma teacher is also a chance to continue to grow and to mature in our practice. Thầy usually teaches us that it takes at least 10 years to be a good Dharma teacher. And being a Dharma teacher, receiving the transmission of the lamp from your teacher and from your community is receiving the trust and the faith that we see in you for you to be a light. In our tradition, when we receive the Dharma, we become a Dharma teacher, we receive a lamp. And the lamp, what it resembles is the flame, the light. The light from generations to generation handed down. And when we should nourish and have the openness to receive the lamp. Some of us may be afraid of the responsibility that it comes with, but know that we are part of this community and we are part of our teacher's continuation. So to receive the lamp is also to receive his trust and receive his legacy that he has created and he is offering to us. So don't be afraid and don't say, oh no, I'm too young, I'm too humble. You have to say, oh, this is an opportunity. This is a chance for me to continue to grow, to continue to learn to be a better monk, a better nun, learn to be a better practitioner. You know, dear Dharma teachers to be, I didn't give my first Dharma talk until 8 years later as a Dharma teacher. So don't be afraid. And a good elder brother or sister is not someone who can speak well. A good elder brother or sister is someone who knows how to be there for the brothers and the sister. And learning to nourish and to carry on the light and to be able to then pass it on to the next generation. Because that is also our responsibility as monks and nuns. We have to help the wheel of the Dharma to continue. And if we're always resisting, then the vehicle of the Dharma becomes stuck. So when we also have this insight that being a Dharma teacher doesn't mean a position of power, it is receiving the trust and allowing the trust to mature inside of us, allowing our aspiration to continue to bloom, continue to grow. And each and every one of us has our own talent and our own skills in the practice and as a member of this community. And we are all cells of this body, this Sangha body. And the more we are at home in this body, the more we learn to generate energy and allow this Sangha body to move forward into the future. Our teacher is not here with us anymore, but he is alive in each and every heart and each and every one of us who has aspired to practice. So if when we receive this invitation to be a Dharma teacher, to receive the lamp, we're also receiving the love from Thai. So don't be afraid and receive this invitation, allowing ourselves to grow. We have to want to also grow on this path. Being a Dharma teacher is also an encouragement for us. When we were novices, we learned that every morning we should touch our head one time to know and remind ourselves that we are monks and nuns. And when we know we are a monk or a nun, we know what to nourish and what not to nourish. And when we wear the robe of a monk or a nun, we don't only represent ourselves, we are also representing the monastic heritage, the monastic lineage that has been handed down to us. So when we receive the Dharma lamp, it gives us fuel to continue to nourish this insight. Nourish this insight that now, as a monk or a nun, I don't only practice for myself. My stability, my transformation, my happiness, my suffering is not just me. And all of our friends who are OI members, it is the same. When we wear the brown jacket, it is what it represents. It is an encouragement in our daily life, encouragement for us to continue to nourish our practice and give us strength. So of course, as a Dharma teacher to be, we also have to have another switch. We have to start to think of the well-being of the community like our own well-being. The well-being of my brothers and sisters is also my well-being. And my well-being is also the well-being of the community. Because that is what a good Dharma teacher understands. And that's what a Dharma teacher way of supporting and nourishing the Sangha. So please come to the Dharma teacher meetings to learn and to also offer the insight. And when the chance comes for you to learn to facilitate, learn to lead a teaching, lead a practice, do not be shy and take it into our own hand and allow ourselves the chance to offer back what has been offered to us. As a Dharma teacher in our community, this is an ongoing practice. You do not become a magnificent practitioner, a Dharma teacher right away. We see that capacity inside of you. And therefore that is why we entrust you this lamp. We entrust you our faith and our hope for you to continue to grow as a monastic brother, a monastic sister. And for our lay friends who are also aspirants, Dharma teachers to be, it is the same spirit. But for the lay, we learn to bring the Dharma outside of the monastery. We continue to develop the practice in our own life, in our family, and in the community that we nourish in our cities, in our town, in our village. And so each and every one of us becomes a light in the world. And the lamp has a protection for the fire to grow and for the fire to continue to flame on, to live on. And that protection is our practice. And when our practice is weak, we learn to rely on the practice of our brothers and sisters so that we can re-establish and begin anew in our practice. So this is an encouragement to all of our brothers and young brothers and sisters who just now enter into the circle of Dharma teachers to be. Please accept this invitation with open heart, and I wish you a wonderful training with us, with the brothers and the sisters. And the next lamp transmission for our brothers and sisters, monastic brothers and sisters, it will be in the next monastic retreat, which will be at the beginning of 2020. So you still have a lot of time, and this is just preparation. Thank you, dear brothers, dear sisters, dear Sangha.